In March of 2020, schools closed as teachers and students were forced to stay at home. From one day to the next, everything changed. Learning suddenly had to be available digitally for a school system that had long been resistant to digitization.
My name's Annemieke Frank. I'm the founder of Edu Co-Creation, and we have a education consultancy that's all about innovating education. That's the short story. The long story is we work together with schools, with corporates, with parents, and really bring this topic of how can we bring education into the 21st century and help schools and public institutions to implement that.
Many startups have been trying for years to adapt German schools to modern living and working realities. But since the outbreak of the coronavirus, the demand for these changes is now greater than ever.
So I'm Lena. I'm one of the co-founders of Soobees. We are two women who have decided about 3 years ago to go in this direction and create something to really change a little bit the way learning in schools would work. Soobees is a platform where students actually learn on their own decisions. So they decide what they want to learn, on which level they want to learn, when they want to do it. Of course, they get the material from the teacher, but everything else, the entire learning process is very autonomous and very self-disciplined and self-decided. When the crisis started, we were actually not really thinking about going public yet. We wanted to do this in months. And therefore, this is also why we're offering it for free, because schools need it now, and it's very long, until schools decide to pay for something. It's a very long and complicated process, and just to enable them to start right away, this is why we're offering it for free at the moment.
Other startups in the education sector had to quickly adapt their business models as a result of the crisis.
With StudyHelp, we are helping students to get better grades and pass their exams. Especially our main market are A-level students in Germany. For us, it's really important to have explanations that are really easy to understand. So we have, especially for the A-level exams, 3-day crash courses all over Germany on our regular business. And now we had to switch to an online alternative in, I think, under 24 hours. It was Thursday at noon where the news came that there are no offline events anymore. And then we had to switch it all to an online version.
A study by the Center for European Policy Studies found that Germany was the worst prepared country in Europe for the required switch to e-learning. Overnight, parents across the country were forced to start teaching their children from home.
The big challenge, not problem, but challenge we have right now is that we're not set up for this whole digital learning yet. And I mean, if you follow the debate within the school system in general and stuff, you know that we are a bit farther behind in Germany than, for example, Finland. So that's why we say, okay, not every resource is online yet to teach the normal kind of school subjects. So what are the other subjects or other topics that kids can learn? And that's exactly the idea with these different coding websites. There's a great science website where kids can actually learn to do science projects at home with baking soda and Sprite. So kind of things that you have in your everyday life. So it's also to bring the fun into these different topics that you can learn.
Another example of a creative solution to learning at home comes from the Danish startup CoboStories.
CoboStories is a magical narrative universe made for children from 3 to 12 years old. We usually tell stories by making either books, digital books, or stop-motion movies. The film workshop is very, very simple. The kids, they start to assemble their stand or their frame where they put their tablet on. Then they make some characters. They start coming up with the story. They start developing this story in their heads. And then at the end, they start making the movie. And when they're done with all that, then they present it. The CoboStories learning process, that we call it, is based on design thinking process. It's a good idea for parents to do creative things with their children when they're at home, because we all know that as a parent, you can't be math or science or anything like that. You can't be a teacher at the same level. So yeah, I think when you learn kids a process, you learn them some creative tools, you learn them a way to analyze things, to break them down into 4 simple stages and say, okay, now we're here, then we go there, there, and there, and then we're done. That's a good way for the parents to get the kids to grasp the whole aspect of what it actually means to have an assignment or to have homework in general.
Results of a representative survey commissioned by the digital association Bitkom, which gathered data from 500 students across Germany, demonstrated that 3/4 of pupils aged between 14 and 19 are dissatisfied with the digital learning opportunities in their schools.
In my experience, when I talk to students, 99% of them are already living in a digital world. So they are using all the social media every day. And a lot of them are also using a lot of digital learning products in their spare time and in the afternoon. But there is almost no digital learning in school. And I think there's a great chance to use this crisis to bring education to the next level. For me, my dream vision would be that you can use the data that you get from the self-service learning, as I call it, to see where the problems are for every student. Because I think the biggest advantage of digital learning can be that you can personalize all the learning that you can offer to the student. And this is something that I can barely see in the education system right now.
If you decide to go digital, you have completely different options with regard to the learning process and the learning levels that you give kids. And this is something schools should really aim for. Have open workplaces, have open, and also not only in space, but also in time. Just have open time spaces where kids can just decide, I want to do math because I'm not doing very well at the moment, but I already finished the book in German, so why should I just sit around 45 minutes and talk about German?
But despite the opportunities, many problems remain. In addition to a lack of hardware and internet connections across Germany being too weak or unstable in many places, teachers have simply not been adequately trained for this shift.
Of course, what we can't forget is with every opportunity, there's also, of course, downsides in the sense we still have a lot of students that don't have access. They don't have access because of technology, because of technological divide, but also because of kind of the digital divide. They don't have the mindsets, they don't have the support from home. So of course, it's still a long way, but we're seeing a lot of positive trends for digital education. And that's actually amazing to kind of see that. It's sad that a situation like this had to kind of invoke it, but it is great to see that these are trends that are happening.
It is highly unlikely that online learning will ever replace the traditional person-to-person teaching we're accustomed to, but it can enhance it.